A man barely into his 30s with no job title, no government post, no fund roll, walked off with more than $4.5 billion. It belonged to a country. He spent it on a yacht, a Van Gogh, and a Hollywood movie about a con man. And the bankers paid to stop him, took a $600 million fee, and signed the papers anyway. This is the story of 1MDB, a fund built to develop a nation that became one man's checking account. Remember that fee? $600 million to one bank across 3 bond deals. Hold on to that number. By the end, you'll understand exactly what it bought and exactly who agreed to look the other way to earn it. July 2009. Najib Razak has just become Malaysia's prime minister. He takes a sleepy state investment body in Terengganu, federalizes it, and renames it One Malaysia Development Berhad. The pitch is noble: attract foreign capital and lift the whole country. But here's the detail that matters. Najib personally chairs its advisory board. He controls it, and almost no one realized how much that meant. Standing just outside the official structure is low-tech Jho, known as Jho Low, early 30s, Penang-born, Wharton-educated, friend of the Prime Minister's stepson. He holds no title at 1MDB, draws no salary, appears on no org chart, and yet prosecutors would later say, he is the man steering nearly every dollar that moves. The fund has an invisible owner. To loot a fund, you first have to fill it. Enter Goldman Sachs. Between 2012 and 2013, the bank arranges 3 bond deals raising roughly $6.5 billion for 1MDB, supposedly for energy projects and a financial district called the Tun Razak Exchange. On paper, a sovereign client raising development money. Underneath, a pipeline being built for theft. Here's the tell. For underwriting a government's bonds, banks normally earn 1 to 2%. Goldman earned roughly $600 million, around 9%, nearly 10 times the going rate. The bank privately placed the bonds, then sold them on at a markup. A fee that size on a sovereign deal isn't a paycheck. It's the price of not asking questions. The bonds were structured so the cash could leak. Proceeds flowed not into Malaysian projects, but into shell companies with names built to deceive, lookalikes of the real Abu Dhabi fund ABAR, plus entities like Good Star and Tenori Finance. The Justice Department says Goldman conspired to pay more than $1.6 billion in bribes to officials in Malaysia and Abu Dhabi to make it all happen. Once skimmed, the money had to be laundered clean. It was layered through banks across Switzerland, Luxembourg, and Singapore, Falcon Bank, BSI, then on into accounts in the United States. Each hop scrubbed away a little more of the trail. By the time the cash arrived somewhere spendable, its 1MDB fingerprints were gone. On paper, it was nobody's money. In reality, it was a country's. In March 2013, days after a bond raise, roughly $681 million landed in Najib Razak's personal and bank accounts, routed through Tenori Finance and Falcon Bank. Not a state account, his own. 2/3 of $1 billion sitting in the checking account of the man who chaired the fund it came from. The pipeline had reached its destination. When that money was eventually discovered, the explanation was breathtaking. It wasn't stolen, Najib's camp said. It was a gift, a personal donation from the Saudi royal family to support him politically and fight ISIS. A king's generosity. Investigators traced it instead straight back to 1MDB bond proceeds from the Tun Razak exchange. The donation was a story. The pipeline was real. Now, the spending. This is where a development fund turns into a fever dream, a super yacht named Equanimity, valued by prosecutors at around $250 million. Floating marble, a helipad, a cinema, bought, prosecutors say, with money meant to build power plants and housing for ordinary Malaysians. It became the gaudiest evidence locker in modern white-collar crime. Then the art. Through the Tenori account, roughly $137 million in masterpieces, a Van Gogh drawing, 2 Monets, and more. Some pieces became gifts to a Hollywood star. Diamond jewelry for a pop singer. Las Vegas tables. The fund's mission statement said development. The receipt said yacht, canvas, casino, and the punchline writes itself. Some of the looted money financed a film about a charming financial fraud, The Wolf of Wall Street, produced by Red Granite Pictures, run by Najib's stepson, Reza Aziz. Stolen money paid to dramatize stolen money. Red Granite later settled with the Justice Department for $60 million. The con bankrolled a movie about the con. For years, the fund's gatekeepers, the auditors, the regulators, the bank treated every red flag as someone else's problem. Each one assumed another set of eyes had already checked, so none of them did. And in the end, it wasn't a regulator who pulled the thread. It was a journalist, working from a laptop in London, reading documents the powerful assumed no one would ever see. In early 2015, Clare Rewcastle Brown's Sarawak report with Britain's Sunday Times exposed how money was diverted through a fake Petro-Saudi joint venture. Then, in July, the Wall Street Journal dropped the bomb. Roughly $700 million sitting in the Prime Minister's personal accounts. The Saudi donation defense met the paper trail. The paper trail won. Najib's response told you everything. He reshuffled the cabinet and sacked his deputy prime minister. He removed the Attorney General Abdul Ghani Patel, who was reportedly preparing charges, before a single one could be filed. Sarawak report was blocked inside Malaysia. An arrest warrant was sought for the journalist herself. He wasn't denying the fire. He was firing the smoke detectors. But the story had already escaped the country. In 2016, the U.S. Justice Department filed civil forfeiture actions, eventually alleging more than $4.5 billion misappropriated, its largest kleptocracy case ever. Suppression bought Najib time, not safety. Then, May 2018. His coalition lost the election. The protection vanished overnight, and the investigators came back through the front door. Now the gatekeeper paid. This is the answer to the question we opened with. Who agreed to look the other way? Goldman Sachs, the bank that took the fee. In October 2020, it reached a roughly $2.9 billion U.S. settlement, the largest penalty ever under the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act, including a $600 million disgorgement, exactly the fee it had pocketed. A separate Malaysian deal cost $3.9 billion more. Najib's reckoning came in stages. In 2020, he was convicted in the SRC International case, a former 1MDB unit, 12 years for a separate $10 million slice. In 2022, he became Malaysia's first imprisoned ex-prime minister. In 2024, a pardons board halved his sentence. Then, December 2025, he was convicted in the big one, the $681 million trial. 15 years. More than $1 billion in assets has been clawed back for Malaysia. The yacht sold. The art surrendered. The Hollywood money returned. And Jho Low, the man with no title who moved billions, still a fugitive, believed to be hiding in China, still quietly forfeiting assets from the shadows, years after the fund he hollowed out was supposed to build a country. Because 1MDB wasn't alone. At Enron, the gatekeepers signed off while the company faked the profits, conjuring earnings that never existed until the whole thing collapsed. Same pattern, different weapon, not stolen cash, but invented income, blessed by the very auditors paid to doubt it. We told that story too, and it rhymes with this one more than you'd like. And Wirecard went further still. Where 1MDB stole real money and Enron invented profits, Wirecard faked the cash itself. Nearly 2 billion euros that auditors confirmed for years, and that simply did not exist. 3 frauds, 1 spine. The people paid to catch it were warned, and they looked away. Watch the Wirecard film next, and you'll see the same blind eye. A fund meant to build a country, drained by a man with no job there, waved through by the bank, the auditors, the regulators, Every institution that was supposed to be the wall. The numbers always leave a trail. Someone just has to be willing to follow it. Subscribe to Florintide for the stories behind the numbers, where we follow the money all the way down.